things I want to talk about in this episode. First, a few of you have mentioned that the sound of my videos is off. I'm wearing my earbuds when I record this. Hopefully that's going to solve any issues. But if it doesn't, just leave me a comment in the comments. The next thing I want to talk about is a video series created by the YouTube creator Crime Sleuthing. Now, I'll link to her in the episode description. She created a 3-part series explaining how she believes the messages between Brad Norton and Steve G were faked. She also says that she reached out to the family and the family insists that the messages are fake. So I want to be clear. This isn't about proving anybody a liar. If he did talk to her and give her that information about that alleged grand jury leak, I wouldn't tell anybody either. So I wouldn't blame them if they didn't want to cop to it. It's fine. This isn't about them. What I am going to say is, people need to start doing better research, because if you did a little research in these messages, you would have seen that there's some overlap between things Steve G has said in interviews and in other messages and things that he said in those messages to Brad Norton. And I'm going to go through a couple now. The first one, here's a message that he sent to the woman who initially sent Brad Norton his way. And, once Brad Norton went live and accidentally, because I don't think it was an accident, told people that she was working with Steve, obviously all hell broke loose and all these people started contacting them, asking them if that was true. And so he completely cut her off at that point. This is a message from him to the woman who introduced Brad to him. And as you can see, he's pretty pissed off, understandably. But he uses the phrase psycho or psychotic wino moms. Now let's go back to a message that he exchanged with Brad, where he says the exact same phrase, psycho wino moms, psychotic wine moms. So there's that. And the second one has to do with the sort of rug product angle of this case that a lot of people like to talk about. If you watch the 48 Hours documentary back in September, you saw an interview that they did with Kaylee's parents. And Steve is asked what he thinks about this rug product angle, and he says that he thinks it's Hollywood.
Drugs were involved in this attack.
That's just Hollywood nonsense.
Well, he said the exact same thing in this message to Brad. Now, I don't happen to think that's a coincidence, but that's me. What I will say is, I watched the 3, I tried to get through all 3 episodes of Crime Sleuthing's series. I have to be honest and say, I just found it very difficult to follow, and I didn't feel like she didn't really get her point across. But I guess what I really want to talk about is, like, contacting the family to ask them about these messages. And I know that this creator she also did an interview with Xana's mom, Kara Northington. And I guess, none of our hands are clean here, right? Because we're all speculating about this case. We're all doing it. But I guess I just don't understand, I don't know, the motivation behind contacting the family. The issue isn't contacting the family. The issue is contacting the family about something like this, or contacting the family about Brad Norton saying she was working with Steve. Like, I don't know. And this is going on throughout the case. There are a lot of people who want to be insider adjacent and say that they have a connection to the case or connection to one of the families. And I don't think I have yet seen an instance of that where it didn't blow up in that person's face. The other day, I asked people to tell me why they believe that Bryan Kohberger is being framed. And I asked some people to walk me through it. And I have some questions. First, how would they have identified him as the person to frame? I'm assuming it's because he applied for that internship, and so maybe they got some information on him. Okay. And The DNA, did that maybe come from, maybe he came into the station? I don't know. Mike, what I don't understand is, how would they have known that far in advance that these crimes were going to occur? That's my question. Why would they pick him? Why, why wouldn't they, if they were going to try and frame somebody, why not try and frame somebody who was in the area, like a student, someone who's been in the house, an ex-boyfriend? Like, I would think if they were going to try to frame somebody, they would frame someone who had a motive, who's been in and out of that house and has probably left a ton of DNA, and especially who saw the victims right before the murders occurred. I mean, if they were going to frame anybody, why wouldn't they frame Kaylee's ex? Why would they frame somebody so random? And how would they do that? How would they know he was going to be out driving that night? Because they've confirmed he was out driving that night. How would they have known he would have been out driving that night? How did they get his DNA? Is it when he applied for the internship? Maybe from WSU? Maybe he had to, I don't know, maybe he had to give something. I don't know. I guess I'm trying to ask people to make this make sense for me, because right now it doesn't. And again, why wouldn't they maybe frame Bryan Kohberger, who had nothing to do with this? And I really wish people would leave that man alone. He served our country, and it's despicable what's being done to his name. But if they were going to frame somebody, why Bryan Kohberger? I'm trying to understand it. Are people thinking that they saw his car that night, maybe, driving in the area, and so they followed him and they got his plate and they figured out who he was, and then they built a case from there? Okay, but I still don't understand, where would they get his DNA? Or are people saying that the DNA isn't actually his DNA? That they're just making that up? How did they know that Bryan Kohberger would match the very general, admittedly, very general description given by Dylan Mortensen? How did they know his height? How did they know his build? Maybe they saw it, like, through the camera, like through the cameras when he was driving? Is that what people are thinking? I'm asking people to walk me through this and explain this to me, because I feel like people are saying he's being framed. Okay, I want to engage in this conversation, but no one's been able to effectively explain how they could frame him. So if you have an idea, leave it in the comments, but please try to be thorough, because I really do want to have this conversation. Before I go, do you think the messages from Steve G are real, or are they fake? And if you think Bryan Kohberger is being framed, why Bryan, and how did they do it? How did they frame him? Tell me in the comments.